to close themselves.
That's
so
perfectly fine. This happens.
So, Mark Griffiths has enjoyed a long career in the craft of working with wood. He has explored many aspects for trade, including writing and teaching. For the past 6 years, he's been part of the Pallasboy Project, as we just heard, a collective who research and recreate wooden objects from prehistory found preserved in wetland landscapes. And for Orla, of Orla Peach Power, on completion of an MPhil in environmental archaeology from University College Cork, she has specialized in the field of photogrammetry and laser scanning, as well as being co-creator of the digital heritage group, the Digital Heritage Age. She currently has a post in science communication at REI Research Center for Energy, Climate and Marine. So thank you very much. And this looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. May I, so that I don't embarrass myself later, may I just check, Ballachulish?
That's a good point. We're debating that one ourselves.
Yeah, I pronounce it Ballachulish, but
Ballachulish. Thank you.
I think it's either or. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm leaning heavily on the Irish language for that pronunciation. So.
Is that? Can you see our screen? Okay, our slides.
Can indeed. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So as we said, today my colleague and I, Orla, will be talking about the Pallasboy Project. And this is the work we've undertaken in reconstruction anthropomorphic figures known as the Ballachulish goddess, using a combination of traditional wooden carving skills, reconstruction tools, and digital recording methods. So say for 2,500 years, the Ballachulish goddess finally fell victim to 19th century amateur archaeology. Discovered by chance laying face down under a layer of peat close to the shore of Loch Leven in the Scottish Highlands, this anthropomorphic figure is carved from a single piece of alder wood. The only clear photograph of the figure was taken soon after the excavation and shows a female form measuring 145 centimetres high by 19 centimetres wide. Her crudely carved legs stand upon a square block, which is rectangular, has a rectangular hollow carved into it. Prominent female genitalia are contrasted by a flat chest, which has led speculation that she may represent a young fertility deity. Beautifully crafted hands can clearly be seen holding a sadly obscured object to her chest. However, it is the extraordinary face of the Ballachulish figure, which, with its piercing quartz stone gaze, that gives the figure its unique power and presence. The only option for preservation of wooden finds in the 1880s was to submerge them in water. Unfortunately, no container could be found that was large enough to hold her, so she was left to dry out. Within a few weeks, timber had split and warped, and unfortunately, during the transportation to the National Museum, both the figure's legs had broken and a large section of a unique face had fallen away. What remained of the Ballachulish figure today can be seen on display at the National Museum of Scotland, backed by wattle and daub wall of intertwined branches and poles, reminiscent of the wickerwork container and shrine that concealed the figure in the bogs of Loch Leven all those years ago. So how do we come to begin our work on the Ballachulish figure? The Pallasboy Project is a multi-phase project that has run for the past 6 years and explores the creative processes involved in the creation of prehistoric wooden artefacts preserved in wetland landscapes. The first phase of the project explores the process of reconstructing the Iron Age Pallasboy vessel, a wooden artefact discovered in 2000 in the Tor Bog, County Westmeath in Ireland. Well, phase 2 looks specifically at the striking anthropomorphic wooden figures recovered from the wetland context across Europe and Great Britain, beginning with the Red Man of Kilburg and concluding with the Ballachulish goddess herself. Our method in the Pallasboy Project involved making recreations of known archaeological wooden artefacts using a mix of contemporary and reconstructed period-specific tools, and preferably working in a location close to the artefact's origin. Then we invite contributors from multidisciplinary backgrounds to interact and explore the piece from their own unique individual perspective. These personal reflections and engagements are then collated into our project website and made available to the public. Each of the 5 members of the Pallasboy Collective have a different yet complementary skills, which we have used to inform the reconstruction and interpretation of the process, as well as to develop the project through its various experimental phases. So here we can see some examples of, these are theories around the Pallasboy vessel. And we just explored those. So some people thought it was used for cooking, for baking bread. It was considered to be maybe a vessel, a water vessel, which we soon proved was completely inadequate, just rolled all the time. Even a musical instrument. We had some experimental musicians to explore the sounds created, because we discovered as we were making the vessel that the sound of the axe just created this lovely, deep, resonance drum beat. So we actually had a little concert of musical instruments, including the Pallasboy vessel, and even a crib for a baby is another thing that it was considered to be used for. So this is the kind of work we do, working with other people, and the way we explore each object that we make. My own role is that of woodworker maker. I've spent the last 35 years working professionally in the timber trade. Without the bias of an education in archaeology, I observe each of our projects simply as a study of a maker's work and learning their techniques and problem-solving methods.
And I'm Orla Peach. Pardon? Oh, sorry, I could hear someone cutting across there. Sorry, so I'm Orla Peach. I'm a co-creator and partner in Digital Heritage Age, which is a collective of digital heritage specialists who work with archaeologists, community groups, museums and research institutes. And this is to provide practical guidance on the use of photogrammetry and laser scanning workflows to record historical objects and to create or curate digital heritage collections online for teaching and learning purposes.
As part of our phase 2 of the project, we invited Rob Mayles of the Ballachulish Community Association to make a recreation of the Ballachulish figure close to the location where she had been discovered on the shore of Loch Leven. There's a participating components in the Pallasboy Project activities overall. We are keen to involve members of the local community in the figure's recreation. After all, they shared a strong bond to the story of the goddess and her place in the history and the identity of both the village and the surrounding landscape. The carving process would be carried out over one weekend, with the finished figure being gifted to the community association. Having first toured around the local schools, the new goddess would eventually be inhumed in the beautiful highland landscape close to the site of the original find. So there's some pictures here of the goddess being taken around some of the schools. It was really interesting, the children's reaction to her. They were sort of nervous to start, some were really nervous, and then others, as you can see, just found her really tactile and just enjoyed exploring her features, her face. So yeah, that was really rewarding. Prior to undertaking the recreation of an archaeological artefact in the Pallasboy Project, a period of desk-based research is undertaken to get a full understanding of the object from both the archaeological perspective and the creative one. This included a review of available site reports, illustrations and photographs, and where possible, an assessment of the artifact itself. We understood very early on that the reconstruction of the figure posed some difficulties due to the lack of photographic or illustrative documents available from the 1880s. The disfigurement of the figure post-excavation and the loss of the finer surface detail due to modern conservation methods. Without that single faded photograph taken in 1880 of the figure just days after her discovery, and the illustrations subsequently produced by Christiansen in 1881, I feel our remade goddess would look quite different from the based as she would be on the twisted, misshapen carving held behind glass in Edinburgh today. Furthermore, we only had one perspective of the goddess to fully understand her form. The team would need closely to examine the original in its full detail. And so the National Museum kindly allowed us to examine and photograph, but more importantly, create a 3D laser scan of the artifact to help with her reconstruction process and the other activities involved. The contemporary process used to preserve waterlogged timber artifacts involves placing the object in a solution of polyethylene glycol over a period of months, or sometimes even years. As the water exits, the timber cell structure is replaced by the waxy PEG solution. Any remaining water is turned into vapor by vacuum freeze drying. Although extremely effective in safely preserving the wooden artifact, the process of pegging has the effect of rendering much of the finer surface detail indistinguishable. When studying an artifact to be remade, I look not only for the tool marks, which inform the size and shape of the chisels and axes that we have specially forged, but also for the signature of the prehistory craftsperson. The signature can be read from one maker to another as an expression of the flow and the style and the skill they hold, in the same way one artist would read the brushstrokes of another. When remaking any artifact, the artist undertaking the work has two choices: either to make an accurate, faithful copy of the original, carefully replicating each and every tool mark, or to attempt to find the working style and character of the person who carved this piece of timber thousands of years in the past and emulate their hand and eye. What is lost in accuracy can be gained in an understanding and connection to the distant craftsperson. And this is why digital recording methods such as laser scanning became a key component in our recrafting process.
So laser scanning is the process of recording the 3D topology of an object in real time using specialist equipment and software. It's one of the digital recording methods that's frequently used in the cultural heritage and archaeological sectors to date, and that's due to the non-invasive nature of the recording process, the speed of the recording process as well, due to the suitability of the scale data to be used to identify changes in the material composition of sites and objects. And this is important because it can help to inform on the decision-making processes involved in scheduled conservation interventions. So in the laser scanning process, minute surface details of an object are recorded by passing a light or a laser over the surface of the object within the scanner's field of view. This light then generates a point cloud, which comprises individual measurements that represent the distance between the scanner and the surface of the object that's being scanned. The Ballachulish goddess was recorded using an Artec EVA handheld scanner, which can capture up to 2 million points per second with up to a 0.1 millimeter accuracy. So that's quite a dense point cloud and quite a number of measurements. This scanner can be mounted on a tripod to capture data, but can also be moved freely around the object being recorded, which makes it a far better piece of equipment for mid-range objects and artifacts such as the Ballachulish goddess. It's mounted with a camera, which means that an accurate recording of the surface color is captured simultaneously with the 3D data as well. So once scanning of the artifact was actually complete, the point cloud data was processed using Artec's designated software, and this was done to produce a 3D textured model. So a texture in this instance actually just refers to the color detail, so that kind of tar black color that's on the goddess at the moment because oil was actually applied to the artifact previously. So the scanning process revealed features not readily available or visible to us in our initial desk-based research, and further clarified details that were discussed in the literature. So in terms of the clarification of details, we got clarification on the dimples that were said to be on either side of the mouth of the figure. There was further clarification on the top knot detail that was recorded by Christensen in 1881 in his work. We also got greater elaboration on the arms of the figure. So instead of just being able to see the hands that come across the abdomen clutching the object, we could actually see where the arms started, where the shoulders even began, and how it extended down the torso. We also got a greater view of the radial split, and this helped us to identify just how much of the feature's hands had been lost due to sections of the wood breaking away, and how much of that is actually just splitting, so the object actually splitting like that. There's additional features also that we found, but myself and Dr. Benjamin Geary, who's one of the co-creators on this project, we're actually compiling that at the moment for a paper, so we're hoping to have that published within the year. Of course, one of the most important aspects of the feature was the rear portion. So that's referring to the back of the head, the base of the skull, extending into the neck and shoulders, and also through the base into the spine, because this wasn't actually the portion that we had a clear image of initially in our research. So the 3D model, while providing a resource for archaeological analysis and artifact assessment, also provided a schematic or blueprint for Mark to work from as he was preparing for the crafting process. So the 3D model allowed for a more accurate recreation of the goddess as she was likely, as she was before, rather than what we see today. So again, when we were doing this process over the weekend in Ballachulish, it was quite a reciprocal process. So Mark was able to use that 3D model to view it, to see some of the finer details and crafting of the back of the skull, features that we hadn't previously seen before. And we could kind of share knowledge with each other throughout the process and with the community as well who was present. So once post-processing was complete, the model was then uploaded to Sketchfab, which is a web hosting platform for managing 3D assets. The model was uploaded without the original texture because sometimes when you leave the original color of the object on it, this will obscure the finer details during analysis. So we tend to strip that off 3D models when we're assessing them. Instead, we use something known as an ambient occlusion texture map. This was applied instead, and that brings up the highlight of the relevant details. So you can see in the image there that Mark has, it's more of a black and white, almost silver tone to it, but you can see all of those details are a lot more visible than had we actually just added the black texture that's on the model today. So Sketchfab is increasingly used by archaeologists and cultural heritage institutes to curate digital collections, as it allows the models to be easily shared across a range of platforms and devices. Thus it to some extent democratizes the data, and allows you to share it with a wider range of audiences than would previously have had access to the model in person. So we use Sketchfab throughout the project lifecycle to share and disseminate the various models that we created, with work on the project being continued now by my colleague and Digital Heritage Age co-founder Gary Dempsey. One feature on Sketchfab that's of particular interest to me is the annotation function. So this basically means that we can add original photographs, technical information, even sound files to the 3D model online as expanded and collapsible balloons, so like information points. This enables us to include personal anecdotes and reflections from the members of the community who came to speak with us throughout the crafting process. And this takes it really from a purely historical and technical context to a current and experiential one. So it adds a greater depth to the model and the subject matter that we're looking at. So instead of just having an archaeological artifact in its academic context, you're looking at something that takes into consideration individual value and experience, their personal reflections of it, so we can actually include the entire chronology of the object from the very beginning up until current times into one annotated environment online. So this is something we're actually hoping to explore a bit more over the coming year with my colleagues with the other objects that we've scanned as well as part of the project.
I'm just going to pop back to another slide, this slide that highlights what Orla was just saying. And these are all like areas that we didn't really have clarity for. Well, I didn't have clarity for the carving process. And the scan for me really highlighted the ear that you can see. Get my cursor over there around here, this ear shape that was really, really obscured on the original. But that sort of popped out with the scanning. And some buttocks as well that wasn't very clear on the original. This is a bit of a sort of lost area, but it just helped us sort of fill in the gaps that were there, and this interesting shape of the neck as well. So because, as I say, a lot of the original had fallen away, it was really hard to sort of find the places where you're working and find that shape and find that where the carver had found their kind of roundness and produced these shapes. So the 3D model really just sort of kind of gave a crispness to that, and yeah, just made it a lot clearer to follow. So in conclusion, as I said, the scanning helped us reveal a wonderful map surface of textures which had all been hidden by the process of preservation. And it offered an opportunity to explore and dive into each contour and cut mark, and otherwise fragile objects can be now held in digital hands, rotated in each and every direction while suspended in space. While carving the Ballachulish figure, I was able to reference each of her unique features on my computer, cross-reference in her current three-dimensional form, the images captured 140 years ago on what was then cutting-edge technology. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you both so much. Really fascinating, and you've ended up with a beautiful figure, as well as the Pallasboy as well. I was just wondering, because I really like seeing, I mean, it felt like it was kind of mixing the two talks we've already had this afternoon of the importance of digital kind of archiving and getting more data that way, and using that to inform reconstruction, getting more data for that. I was wondering, for the outreach side, when you were going around with the statue to schools and the like, did that change your reconstructions, that inform your reconstructions in any way once you saw how people were kind of relating to the statue, using it?
Yeah, it was what struck us was how important the statue was to the community and their identity, even though it was like taken away from them all those years ago. they still had a really strong bond to it. And even we were talking to people, some of the older members of the community, who their grandparents remember the figure being found. And shockingly, they told us that the documented find site is actually wrong, and it was found much higher up than the shoreline that it was suggested. So there's all these different, you have to like listen to the local community plus what the documented evidence was, but it just threw up lots of questions. And yeah, it felt like you're almost sort of giving something back and seeing a community respond to something that is named after them, they're all aware of, but they had a opportunity to physically touch and see this object that was just tucked behind glass in Edinburgh now, and then take it off and do what they want. It was great just leaving it with them, just saying, okay, do what you want to do. So it is now buried on a hillside somewhere, and they're asking us to come back and exhume the figure and have a little celebration of that. So that's
a reunion tour, yeah.
Put in the diary.
That's fantastic. Susanna asks, following the scanning, are you still convinced it's female form?
What do you think, Orla?
Well, there's a very definite vaginal region, I would say, but what do you think, Mark, when you were reconstructing it?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of, funny enough, I was in Dublin a few months ago, and I was doing the Raglan figure that's held in Dublin, Dublin Museum now, and it's called the Raglan Man. And from carving it and looking at the original, I would say it was definitely a female figure. It had a socket possibly for detachable penis, which whether it was or not, but that's the theory behind it. But I think a lot of these figures, that they at the time, we were looking at Victorian sensibilities and different interpretations on them, but I think they're clearly female. And the other thing with this figure is we didn't carve anything on the chest, so our hands are placed like this. She's obviously holding something. There seems to be 3 peaks, and you can see the 3 peak mountains behind, which is the area she was found in. So it could be a representation of that. There was also, it seemed to be like either a bunch of flowers, or some people have interpreted it as severed penises, which whatever you want to do, but we just wanted to leave that out because we didn't have any real clarity.
We didn't have any tangible proof of that when we actually saw it.
So we want to start adorning her instead of penises when it wasn't really her thing. So we left that clear. It's one thing that Scan didn't really bring up.
We said we'd look at that one. There was definitely, upon scanning it, you could see, so there was wonder if maybe there was just damage to the chest region when it fell over, or maybe they hacked at it, but actually on looking at it, it seems to go against the grain, which would imply that it wasn't accidental. It was an intentional carving that was on the chest. It's just the detail. Sadly, it's not there. Maybe if we used a stronger resolution of a scan, it might come up, but it seemed like there definitely wasn't a penis there anyway when we looked at it, but so we left that out. But there is definitely some intended directionality to the marks that are on the chest for sure. So,
interesting. Yeah, and rare bads, there are other figurines in the later Iron Age where it appears to be female genitalia and flat chest isn't unique, though we are presented with chronological gaps. She also asks, are there plans for any new dating, or are the dates from Cole's 1990, so around 728 to 524 BCE, still considered accurate?
I don't think there's any more plans to redate it. As far as I know now, the National Museum didn't mention that they were going to be doing that, so I think they're happy with the dates.
Excellent.
I'm not to speak for them, but
one more question, just kind of out of my own interest, and you've sort of already answered it, is really fascinating things on the Ballachulish goddess and on the vessel. What would you like to do next? But it sounds like you've already done the Raglan Man. So
we've done quite a few things actually. If it's plug in the WordPress site, it's worth having a look. We actually made a logboat a few years ago as well, and floated it on Loch Corrib in Ireland. Full-size Iron Age logboat from a huge oak tree that was over 3 meters long. So that took us a while to do. So there's a few projects we're on there. As I say, have a look at our website.
Yeah, I am definitely going to. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Stick around for the discussion, see if we get any more questions in. If anyone does have any more questions, please stick them in the chat. There's some good discussion in there already about people being scared of the goddess figure, what that might mean for our understanding in the past. But for now, we'll move on to our final talk of the day.